When it comes to blue fragrances, I've tried a lot, ranging from expensive to extremely inexpensive. But now that it's 2023, the question is, should you even still buy blue fragrances? And if so, which ones should you buy? Well, I'm going to answer all those questions in this video. So, what is a blue fragrance? Well, most blue fragrances are citrus forward or aquatic forward. They dry down into a more spicy kind of version of themselves, and then they dry down once again into a smokier or woodier version of what the original fragrance is. Even something as cheap as this Dossier clone of Dolce & Gabbana Light Blue, it follows those same principles. So, if all of these fragrances follow the same formula, what would be the difference between getting a expensive one versus cheap ones? Well, with these two cheap ones that I'm going to use for my example, Dolce & Gabbana Light Blue Clone from Dossier and Dylan Blue from Versace. These fragrances always are synthetic throughout their entire duration. Very synthetic opening, very synthetic dry down. The incense in here kind of gives this a much needed quality boost versus this. So this is a quality jump up from this. However, both of these fragrances still smell very synthetic. As you go up in prices, you start to have fragrances that smell very, very similar. For example, Luna Rossa Carbon and Dior Sauvage smell very similar. This one is a more metallic and a bit more earthy version of what Dior Sauvage is. This is a more citrus pepper forward fragrance. A little bit synthetic, but not nearly as synthetic as Dylan Blue. This one right here is more synthetic than Dior Sauvage in my opinion, and that's because that metallic kind of smell gives that appearance of super synthetic. This is the same issue that comes with the fragrance Acqua di Gio. Oftentimes metallic fragrances give a more synthetic kind of feel, which is why I try to stay away from most of those kind of fragrances. With these fragrances, the better pick in my opinion would be Dior Sauvage, but most people are going to say it's overrated or everybody has that, so Prada Luna Rossa Carbon is a good pick as well. Now, Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette is in their price bracket, so why did I separate it? Well, for one reason. This fragrance is so much different than almost every other blue fragrance on the market. There is almost no blue fragrance that does what Bleu de Chanel does. It's grapefruit as its type of citrus. It's got some ginger and spices there, and then it comes down, I think, with some incense and sandalwood. This stuff is a great fragrance. The only problem is the only thing close to Bleu de Chanel is itself. Bleu de Chanel Parfum, Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum, Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette. Very, very similar fragrances to the point where you're kind of wasting money if you have all three of them. It's really not needed. I would go with the Parfum for myself because it just smells better to me a bit. It's a bit smoother. The lemon zest is a better opening in my opinion than the grapefruit, but overall these fragrances are very similar. The Parfum though is so much more expensive than the Eau de Toilette. So in terms of price, this is where I would say price kind of doesn't matter as much when it comes to smell. So once you get to that $100, $120 price range, you start to get fragrances that smell very similar in quality. Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette, I do think is a bit better quality than Dior Sauvage. However, Bleu de Chanel and Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum are much closer in quality. But then you have a fragrance like Parfums de Marly Sedley, which is a noticeably better quality than most of the fragrances I listed, except for Bleu de Chanel Parfum. But this fragrance is so different in terms of smell. It's got that bright, crisp citrus and mint opening, and that separates it a lot. It's beautiful in everything that it does. I know a lot of people say it's generic, but there's not like any designer fragrance or niche fragrance that smells like Sedley smells. Now, maybe you'll smell an actual shower gel that smells like this, which is why people say it's generic, but there's almost no fragrance that I can think of that smells like Parfums de Marly Sedley. But then you have the issue of performance, and most blue fragrances are made to perform. That is what they are. They are the everyday fragrance. But sometimes when you pay more, you don't get that performance. For example, Bleu de Chanel Parfum, sucky performance. Pay for Sedley, which has good performance, but if you want just pure performance, you might as well just buy Dior Sauvage Eau de Toilette. It outperforms all of them. It projects stronger than them. It lasts longer than most of them. So it's like, why would you buy any of the others in most people's head? This is why Dior Sauvage is such a popular fragrance. It performs well, it smells nice, and it smells so good to the general public that that's the fragrance that usually gets picked. Personally, I think blue fragrances are great. I would recommend staying within the $80 to $150 price range, because that's usually where the best ones are going to be at. You don't have to spend a fortune on them, but generally you'll get different things and newer things when you spend more money on a fragrance. The problem is, the more money you spend, you generally get less mass appeal. Most people are not willing to trade mass appeal for a fragrance that smells different, so they just stick with the things that they already know. In my opinion, blue fragrances can be absolutely fantastic, but when everybody picks the same one, that kind of takes the fun and the joy out of it. I've already stated many times, citrus is one of my favorite things, and because blue fragrances oftentimes are citrus forward, I love them all. I'm going to stick with my Bleu de Chanel parfum, my Parfums de Marly Sedley as my main choices for blue fragrances, but you guys can buy whatever makes you feel good. So guys, that's my video on if blue fragrances are still worth it. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe. Thank you to everybody who has helped me reach 500 subscribers. Let's shoot for 600. And if you want to see the full breakdowns of any of these fragrances, the ones that do have a full breakdown on my channel, I will link that in the description down below. But that's all I have for you guys. I'll see you in the next one.